The Outback doesn't swallow children by accident. It leaves only silence. In the endless reds and golds of South Australia's remote outback, a 4-year-old boy named Gus Lamont vanished in broad daylight. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no toy left behind. And just one chilling question echoing across his family's station. He did not walk into the outback. Was he taken? A child who should have been within sight vanished into nothing. Today, the land that seemed to protect him may hold the darkest truth of all. If you believe every child's story deserves to be heard, and that no disappearance should be accepted as just another mystery, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what your thoughts are on Gus's disappearance. The more voices keep the story alive, the less likely the truth stays buried. Welcome back to Shadow Detective, where we uncover the real crimes, the real victims, and the truths buried beneath the headlines. He was 4 years old, wide-eyed, curious, sand on his boots. Gus Lamont lived on his family's remote sheep station in the outback of South Australia, a place where isolation is normal and the horizon seems endless. On Saturday, 27 September 2025, around 5, his grandmother last saw him playing on a mound of dirt outside the homestead about 40 south of the tiny town of Wooltana in the mid-north region. After about 30 minutes, she called him in and he was gone. Gus was described by those who knew him as shy but adventurous. The kind of little boy who kicked up red dust in the afternoon sun, for whom out here was simply home. The station sprawled across hundreds of hectares of arid scrub, tracks, and low hills. Beautiful, yes, but brutal when something goes wrong. In that moment, when the grandmother went to call him in, what should have been routine turned into an unthinkable absence. No toy left behind, no footprints tracing a path, no sign of where he might have gone. The land, so familiar and open, became a silent enigma. As the family realized Gus had vanished, panic set in, not because they expected something extraordinary, but because they simply could not believe that a 4-year-old could leave the yard without leaving any trace. In this community, the Outback is known for being unforgiving, but it is also known for leaving something behind. Footprints in the sand, broken ground, something. Here, there was nothing. This wasn't just a loss, it was a disappearance that ignored every pattern the land and the searchers knew. And in that absence, the question arose, was the Outback really the end of this story, or just the stage on which something else happened? Saturday, the 27th of September, 2025, around 5:30 p.m. at approximately 5:30, 4-year-old Gus Lamont was reportedly playing outside the family's homestead at Oak Park Station, a remote sheep property some 40 km south of Wooltana, South Australia. His grandmother says she observed him on a mound of dirt near the homestead. About 30 minutes later, at roughly 5:30 p.m., the grandmother went to call Gus in for the evening, and he was gone. There were no signs of him in that immediate area. Evening of the 27th of September, to the next few hours, the family immediately began searching the immediate area, calling his name, checking nearby sheds, tracks, water points. By nightfall, the Outback's temperatures dropped sharply, and the family's fear deepened. What should have been a short search lost hope fast. Sunday, the 28th of September, day 2, a ground search escalated. South Australia Police, SAPOL, local volunteers, and neighbors combed the property. Searchers noted the vastness of the terrain and the absence of any footprints or personal belongings belonging to Gus. Despite intensive efforts, no clear trail emerged. Over the next several days, days 3-7, the search ballooned into one of the largest coordinated efforts ever conducted in that remote region. Helicopters, drones with thermal imaging, Aboriginal trackers, all-terrain vehicles, Australian Defence Force, ADF personnel. The search area grew to over 470 square km, 47,000 ha of rough outback terrain. A child-sized footprint was discovered near a dam location, spurring a focused search of that area, but it was later ruled unrelated to Gus. On 7 October, SAPOL publicly confirmed that no evidence, no footprints, no clothing, no direction of travel had been found. Around 10 October, transition into recovery phase. After roughly 10 days of intensive searching, with nothing to show but blank terrain, SAPOL scaled back the ground search. Authorities shifted from a rescue to a recovery and investigation posture, placing the case into the missing persons section of major crime. Despite the scale of the search and technological support, the land gave up nothing. Searchers and family were left grappling with the silence of the Outback. 15 October 2025, expansion of search and task force launch. A new task force, Task Force Horizon, was established to examine all remaining avenues. Search resources were remobilized to an expanded area of the property that had not yet been covered. Around 80 ADF personnel joined. Despite this renewed push, SAPOL maintained that no evidence of foul play had been identified. Current status as of now, Gus remains missing. The absence of trace evidence, no dropped hat, no footprints, no toy, no clear direction of movement, continues to defy expectations for a missing 4-year-old in such terrain. Many experts now believe the possibility of human intervention must be considered alongside accidental wandering. This timeline lays out the known sequence of events, from the moment Gus was last seen to the current state of investigation. The pressing questions remain: what happened in that window between 5 p.m. and 5:30? Why is there not a single reliable trace? And if he didn't simply walk off into the outback, then what did happen? From the moment Gus Lamont vanished, authorities launched one of the largest search operations in the history of the South Australian outback. Ground teams from South Australia Police, SAPOL, the Australian Defence Force, the State Emergency Service, SS Aboriginal trackers, and local station workers fanned out across the remote property. Drones with infrared capability scanned low scrub and gullies at night. Helicopters hovered overhead. Searchers walked kilometers each day, combing red dust tracks and dry water holes. The scale was staggering. At one point, SAPOL estimated they had covered approximately 470 square kilometers of terrain. Yet despite boots on the ground, infrared sweeps, satellite imagery, and specialized search protocols, no trail, no personal item, no trace of Gus emerged. In early October, search efforts shifted. SAPOL issued a statement confirming that, following expert advice, the operation was moving from a rescue posture into a recovery and investigation phase. A small footprint found near a dam sparked a brief flurry of hopeful activity, but in time was ruled unrelated to Gus. Volunteers and search personnel voiced growing unease. As one former SS member said, "Zero evidence. It's just wide open land. He's not on that property." By mid-October, the major ground search at the property had been concluded, though the investigation continues under the Missing Persons Unit. Key investigation notes: a specialized drone infrared sweep was deployed, the same kind of technology used in high-profile cases elsewhere. Searchers were hampered by terrain and weather. Daytime heat soared, nights were cold, wind blew dust and scrub obscured tracks. The family has cooperated fully, and they are supported by a victim contact officer. A public appeal remains active. Police continue to request any information from anyone who may have been near the property at the time. The bottom line: despite vast resources and modern tools, the land gave nothing back. And that absence of trace is as haunting as it is unusual. Narrator's voice only as the days stretched into weeks, with no trace of Gus Lamont. The official line remains that he may have wandered off, but the absence of physical evidence has triggered at least 3 major theories, each with its own set of questions. Theory 1: accidental wandering into the outback. From the outset, investigators and local authorities treated Gus's disappearance as a possible misadventure, an unintentional walk into the vast, rugged terrain of South Australia's outback. On paper, it seemed plausible. Gus was last seen around 5 p.m., playing outside near the family's remote station. But the expectations of this theory don't align with the facts. Normally, even in rough terrain, a small child wandering off would leave something: footprints, a dropped item, broken vegetation.
Here, there was nothing.
Searchers reported no recognizable trail. One volunteer tracker even said, "It's just wide, open land. He's not on that property." The question becomes, how does a 4-year-old disappear into an open area without leaving any mark? Theory 2: searcher response flaws and unseen factors. Some critics argue the trouble isn't with the child or the land, it's with the initial response and search coordination. Key questions: how long was Gus actually missing before his absence was noticed? Were all likely paths, water holes, mine shafts, fence lines, and roads searched thoroughly in that crucial first hour? Former Detective Gary Jubilin of the William Terrell case has suggested that the broad lack of evidence may mean the investigative approach needed to treat this as a criminal intervention possibility much sooner. On the search side, thousands of hectares were covered, some 470, but a volunteer searcher pointed out the oddity. With trackers, dogs, drones, lights, and hundreds of hours, they found nothing to indicate he is on the property. This raises another possibility, that the search area or assumptions about the last known location may have been too narrow or misdirected, delaying a critical early lead. Theory 3, abduction or third-party intervention, kidnapping.
Yeah.
This is the darkest and most uncomfortable theory, but many experts say it cannot be ignored. The sheer absence of trace evidence, combined with how unusual such a disappearance is in that terrain, points toward the possibility of human intervention. Evidence in support: no footprints, no dropped items, no sightings despite the station being active and other adults nearby. A former searcher said, "There's really not much there. I just don't get how he vanished like that." A footprint found near a dam was ruled out. Social media and public speculators have circulated sighting claims and possible vehicle involvement, but many of these have been debunked as fake or AI generated. Importantly, authorities have not confirmed any evidence of foul play. But still, criminologists warn, the longer a young child remains missing with zero trace in a fully searched area, the more likely a third party may have been involved. If Gus was abducted, the questions multiply. Who might have been at the station? What vehicles moved in the area? Were any strangers seen? How quickly did that window close? Contradictions and tensions among theories. The wandering theory fits a familiar narrative, but the lack of any trail makes it highly unusual. The flawed search theory points to human error, not an explanation of what happened, only how it might have been missed. The abduction theory raises heavy ethical and investigative stakes, but demands evidence that so far has not been publicly verified. Meanwhile, false leads and AI-generated content continue to muddy the waters, distracting from legitimate investigation. As we weigh these possibilities, one thing stands out: the truth remains unsettled. Whether Gus wandered, was missed, or was taken, each scenario implies different responsibilities and different outcomes for his family, the investigators, and the community at large. When you watch this case, ask yourself, which theory holds the most weight in your view, and what unanswered question matters most to you? The disappearance of Gus Lamont is more than a missing child case. It is a mirror held up to society's vulnerabilities, exposing fractures in systems designed to protect and respond. At its core, Gus's story reveals how quickly hope can shift to despair in the vast, unforgiving Australian outback, a place where isolation magnifies the urgency of every search and the weight of every unanswered question. The remote location presents real challenges: sparse population, difficult terrain, limited technology coverage, and stretched emergency resources. But beyond geography, the case shines a light on deeper societal and institutional challenges. First, there is the question of search and rescue coordination. In the critical hours after Gus vanished, authorities deployed extensive resources: police, volunteers, trackers, drones, even helicopters. But coordination between agencies and volunteers can be complicated in such remote areas. The complexity of terrain, communication gaps, and sheer size of the search zone leave room for crucial leads to be missed or delayed. Families and communities rely on these early hours to find their loved ones. Every moment matters. Second, this case reveals the persistent challenge of media portrayal and public attention. Stories like Gus's often receive intense coverage initially, but the relentless flood of news cycles and sensationalized headlines can both help and harm. On one hand, media can mobilize public interest and volunteers, shining light on gaps in official efforts. On the other, it can fuel speculation, spread misinformation, and at times distract from evidence-based investigation. Social media platforms have seen a surge of unverified claims and AI-generated images that complicate efforts, creating confusion and false hope. Third, Gus's disappearance underscores the emotional toll on families and communities living in remote Australia, often accustomed to resilience, but still deeply affected by trauma. For Gus's family, every day is filled with uncertainty and fear, a reality that no parent should endure. Finally, the case touches on systemic issues of child safety in rural and remote environments. The intersection of isolation, limited supervision, and accessibility can increase risks. Community support networks, better infrastructure, and culturally sensitive programs are vital to address these vulnerabilities. This case asks us to consider not just what happened to Gus, but how we as a society respond to disappearances, especially in places where the landscape itself seems to conspire against closure. In the silence of the outback, the search for answers is also a search for accountability, of systems, of communities, and of ourselves. At the heart of this story is a little boy, a bright, curious child, whose laughter once echoed across the red dust of Wooltana Station. Gus Lamont was more than a name in a headline. He was somebody's son, a cherished light in the lives of those who loved him. His disappearance left a void, not only in his family's hearts, but in a community still grappling with the unbearable weight of not knowing. The silence of the outback holds no answers yet, only the lingering ache of absence. For Gus's family, the search never truly ended. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still, the questions outnumber the answers. How does a child vanish so completely, without a trace, without a clue? This case does not offer neat conclusions or easy explanations. It refuses to be forgotten because forgetting means letting go of hope, justice, and the truth that remains just out of reach. And maybe in that quiet tension between despair and hope, there is a deeper call to never stop looking, to never stop asking, and to never stop believing that even in the darkest places, light can still be found. Now I want to hear from you. After everything we've explored today, do you believe the official version of events, that Gus wandered off and the Outback swallowed him whole? Or does the evidence point to something more deliberate, something darker? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from. Every perspective matters, and every voice helps keep Gus's story alive. If this case moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It's your support that helps bring these stories back into the light, where truth and memory belong. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember sometimes, the greatest mysteries aren't just about what we find, but about what we refuse to let go.